They said he raised his hand to fight, but they never asked why. They saw his skin, not his fear. His silence, not his story. 12 years old, accused, judged, nearly erased. But Malik Porter didn't shout. He opened a file folder. And what came next? Made a whole system sit down and listen. If stories about quiet courage and justice from unexpected places matter to you, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes, the smallest voice in the room carries the biggest truth. Asterisk, the morning hallways of Lincoln Middle School buzzed with lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, and the murmur of kids trying to remember their math homework. It looked like any other Monday on the surface. But beneath the hum of adolescent chatter, there was something else that morning. A tension. A stillness that didn't belong. Malik Porter felt it, before his name even echoed through the schools. Loudspeaker, he felt it in the way a few kids glanced his way and quickly looked down. In the way his homeroom teacher bit her lip and shuffled the attendance sheet. Then it came. Malik Porter, please report to the principal's office. Immediately. The voice over the speaker was calm. Too calm. A few classmates turned to look. Malik didn't say anything. He just quietly zipped up his backpack and stood, his shoulders squared. At 12 years old, Malik had already learned the art of quiet exit. No eye contact. No questions. Just walk. His homeroom teacher offered a sympathetic half-smile as he passed her desk, but it felt like pity more than comfort. As he made his way down the wide hallway, lined with faded motivational posters and vending machines that hadn't worked since before he was born, Malik's mind raced. He replayed recess. Cody had pushed him. Malik had stumbled back. Instinctively, he'd raised his arm to block the fall. That was it. No punches. No shouting. Just a shove and a reaction. But he already knew what this was. It didn't matter what actually happened. He'd seen it before. A black boy gets accused, and suddenly the facts blur. The office smelled like lemon-scented cleaner and anxiety. Miss Carmichael, the school secretary, looked up from her computer and gave him a tight nod. Go on in. They're waiting. He stepped into the principal's office. The air was colder here. Sterile, like a hospital or a courtroom. Principal Hammond sat behind a large oak desk, shuffling papers. His expression was unreadable, his tie a little too tight, like he hadn't adjusted it in a while. Beside him sat Mrs. Geller, one of the sixth-grade teachers, white, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Have a seat, Malik, the principal said, gesturing. To the plastic chair in front of the desk. Malik sat, back straight, hands folded, eyes forward. Malik, the principal began, glancing at the paper in his hands. A student has reported that you hit him during recess today. That student now has a bruise under his eye. Malik blinked. I didn't hit him. According to Mr. Jameson, our playground monitor, there was a physical altercation. He saw you with your hand raised. I was trying to block myself. He shoved me. Was that before or after you struck him? Mrs. Geller cut in, her tone sharp, already convinced of guilt. I didn't strike anyone, Malik said, voice steady but soft. Cody pushed me. I didn't hit him back. He tripped and hit his face on the pole. The principal tapped the desk twice with his pen. Regardless, this is a serious matter, Malik. You've been involved in 2 other incidents this semester, involving rough play. One was a dodgeball game, Malik answered quietly. The principal ignored him. For now, we're issuing a 3-day suspension. You'll complete your assignments at home. Malik stared at the floor. His face didn't change. No tears, no protests. Just a stillness that only comes from being disappointed, but not surprised. Can I call my mom? The principal nodded. Of course. Miss Carmichael will help you with that. As he stood to leave, Mrs. Geller muttered something just low enough to be half audible. Always the same story with these kids. Malik didn't flinch. But he heard it. He always heard it. Outside the school building, the sun shone bright and indifferent. A few kids played kickball in the distance. The world kept turning, blissfully unaware that Malik Porter had just been labeled. The walk home was long. His mother was working the night shift at the hospital again, 12 hours on her feet, trying to hold together other people's families while hers was slowly being pulled apart. She wouldn't be home until after dark, but she'd get the voicemail. The apartment building where they lived stood like a tired monument in the corner of a forgotten neighborhood. Faded bricks, chipped balconies, laundry hung like flags of a quiet survival. Malik took the stairs 2 at a time, not because he was in a rush, but because he didn't want to hear the sounds in the elevator. That slow, grinding groan it made always reminded him of people pretending to care. Their apartment smelled faintly of lavender and Lysol. His mother cleaned before every shift, like it was her way of saying sorry for not being there when things went wrong. Malik dropped his bag and headed straight to the small desk in the corner of the living room, the one that used to be his dad's. On the desk sat a dusty laptop and an old paperback copy of the U.S. Constitution. His dad used to joke that if Malik ever got in trouble, the law would be his armor. He hadn't laughed when he said it. Malik opened the laptop. The screen flickered to life. His dad's login picture was still there, a grinning man in a crooked tie holding baby Malik in his arms. Underneath was the username, DP or tur-legal aid. He entered the password, justice first. The desktop was filled with folders labeled case files, templates, state statutes. But Malik knew where to go. His father had made a special folder for him, Malik's Rights. Inside were resources, videos, PDFs, a Word document titled No Due Process. Malik clicked it open and began to read. Due process means every person deserves a fair hearing. Not just the accusation, but the evidence. Not just the punishment, but the right to explain. He read about burden of proof, about witness credibility, about disciplinary hearings in school districts. He began typing. 2. Principal Hammond Ree. Request for due process hearing, recess incident. I, Malik Porter, am requesting a formal review of the suspension issued on 3/14. He wrote like his future depended on it, because in some ways it did. At 7:42 p.m., the door opened. Donna Porter, still in her scrubs, hair tied back, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, stepped in carrying a grocery bag and a stack of paperwork. She saw Malik sitting at the desk and paused. You eat anything? No. She set the bag down and walked over. Read the screen over his shoulder, then slowly sank into the chair beside him. You writing a paper? I'm filing a formal appeal. Donna raised an eyebrow. They said I hit Cody. I didn't. She nodded slowly, lips pressed thin. And you're handling it yourself? I want to. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a long moment said nothing. Then she reached out and squeezed his hand. You sound just like your father. Malik didn't smile, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. That night, as the city rumbled on outside, their window sirens in the distance, neighbors arguing, a dog barking somewhere below, Malik printed the letter, folded it neatly, placed it in his backpack. Tomorrow, he'd hand it in, and this time, when they looked at him, they wouldn't just see a black kid who raised his hand. They'd see someone who knew exactly how to use it. The apartment was silent the next morning, a kind of silence that hangs heavy in the corners and seeps into your clothes. Outside, the city yawned to life. Bus brakes hissed, car horns barked, and somewhere in the next building, a baby cried. But inside Malik's home, there was only the quiet rhythm of pages turning. Donna Porter stood by the kitchen counter in her blue scrubs, a half-eaten slice of toast in one hand and the letter Malik wrote in the other. Her eyes moved over the words again and again, like if she stared long enough, maybe the world would make sense. It didn't. She was exhausted. Tired in a way that coffee couldn't touch. Last night, she'd spent 12 hours on her feet at the hospital. The 8 had been slammed car accident victims, a stabbing, a child with seizures. She'd watched lives unravel in front of her. And now, home barely 4 hours, she was reading that her 12-year-old son had to learn legal terminology just to be treated fairly. It made her sick. You sure you want to hand this in yourself? She asked gently. Malik nodded, sitting at the dining table, laptop still open, a second draft of his appeal pulled up on the screen. I want them to hear me. Not just you. She walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. They'll hear you, baby, but you need to know. They may not listen. I know, he said, eyes fixed on the screen. But if I don't do this, they'll think I didn't care. That stopped her. For a moment, Donna didn't see her son as a boy anymore. She saw her husband Derek Porter years ago, sitting in the same spot with stacks of case files, telling her, if the system is designed to forget people like us, then we better learn how to remind it. She leaned down and kissed the top of Malik's head. All right then, she said. Let's remind them. By the time Malik arrived at school, the whispers had already started. He's back? I thought he got suspended. I heard he punched Cody in the face. No way. He's too quiet for that. Malik kept walking, steady and slow. He didn't look left or right, just straight ahead. It was strange how fast a rumor could move in middle school. It was like smoke. It didn't need fire, just enough people willing to pass it along. He stepped into the main office and handed the letter to Miss Carmichael. I need this delivered to Principal Hammond. It's a formal appeal, he said. Miss Carmichael blinked, taking the envelope. She read the front, then read it again. Okay, Malik, she said, her voice slightly more respectful than the day before. I'll make sure he gets it. Malik nodded and walked back out. He knew he wouldn't be in class today, but he didn't care. Not really. He had a different assignment now. At 4:15 that afternoon, Donna Porter showed up at the school. She didn't wear her scrubs. She didn't come as a tired nurse or a stressed-out single mother. She came in dark jeans, a blouse, and her hair pulled back tight. She came as a woman who was no longer going to be polite. She walked into the office, her heels clicking against the tile like gavel strikes. Is Principal Hammond available? She asked calmly. Miss Carmichael glanced up. He's in a meeting. I'll wait. It took 15 minutes. 15 long, silent minutes. Donna didn't sit. She stood by the window and stared out at the parking lot like it owed her something. When Hammond finally emerged, his surprise was poorly hidden. Mrs. Porter, he said, forcing a smile. How can I help you? She stepped forward and handed him a printed document. This is a request for the security footage from the playground cameras between 11:32 and 11:40 a.m. yesterday. My son was accused of physical assault. I'd like to see what actually happened. Hammond frowned. Mrs. Porter, that footage is typically reserved for internal review. According to Michigan State Code 380.1310b, Section 4, any guardian has the right to request video footage when it pertains to disciplinary action against their child. I have it highlighted for you. She flipped to the section and tapped it with her index finger. Hammond adjusted his tie. Well, I'll need to speak with the district attorney and our school board representative. Good, she cut in. Because I've already emailed them. The principal blinked. Donna continued. I want the footage. I want a copy. And I want someone besides the accuser reviewing it. Hammond shifted his weight uncomfortably. Let me check with legal. You do that, she said. And while you're at it, Maybe pull the file on Cody Miller too. I'd be interested to see how many times he's been written up. She turned on her heel and left. That night, back at home, Malik sat on the couch with Shadow curled up beside him. Shadow was their aging shepherd lab mix. His gray muzzle rested on Malik's thigh, one blind eye still scanning the room like it owed him rent. Malik scratched behind his ear. "You ever get tired of being blamed for stuff you didn't do?" He whispered. Shadow gave a soft grunt. Malik took that as a yes. The TV flickered quietly in the background, but he wasn't watching it. He was reading a book his dad had given him years ago. The Other Side of the Fence, What It's Like to Grow Up Black in America. He didn't always understand every word, but he understood the feeling. 2 days later, the footage was reviewed. Not in private, not in secret. Donna demanded the school call a meeting. With her present. It was held in a small conference room with a single monitor mounted on the wall. Malik, Donna, Principal Hammond, the school counselor, and 2 teachers were in attendance. The lights dimmed. The video played. The screen showed the playground. Kids running, yelling. Cody Miller approaching. Malik near the basketball court. Cody shoved Malik hard. Malik stumbled back, arms flying up to protect his head. Cody lost balance, slipped, and hit his face against a pole. It was over in 10 seconds. When the lights came back on, no one spoke. Donna crossed her arms. So. About that 3-day suspension? Principal Hammond cleared his throat. It appears there was a misunderstanding. No, Malik said quietly. There was a judgment, without facts. Donna looked at her son, then back at the room. We'll expect a written apology in Malik's file. And I'd also like to speak to the school board about bias training for staff. Hammond nodded stiffly. Of course. As they walked out into the hallway, Malik asked, "Do you think this changes anything?" Donna thought about it. About how hard it had been just to be heard. About how many kids didn't have parents who knew what to say. About how many kids had no one. She stopped and looked down at him. "It changes our story," she said. "That's a start." They reached the exit, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't back down." Malik looked up at her, eyes steady. "Neither did you." That night, Malik opened a new Word document. He didn't title it Legal File. Not this time. He titled it, How to Be Heard When They Don't Want to Listen. He wasn't sure who he was writing it for. Maybe for the kid who'd get called into the office next. Maybe for the kid who didn't know what due process meant. Maybe for himself, so he'd never forget. Because the fight wasn't just about a recess incident. It was about every time someone decided your story didn't matter, and he wasn't going to let them write it for him again. Friday morning arrived like a slow breath after a storm. The apartment was still, but not in a heavy way, more like the calm right before something important. Donna was already dressed, her hair pulled back neatly, makeup subtle but sharp. Malik stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the cuffs of his white shirt. The one they saved for church and special occasions. It didn't quite fit anymore. The sleeves were a little short. But he didn't care. He didn't want to look perfect. He wanted to look serious. His tie was crooked. Donna stepped behind him and fixed it without a word. Her fingers moved quickly, years of habit in each motion. "You nervous?" she asked, not looking at him in the mirror. "A little," he said truthfully. "You want me to speak for you?" Malik shook his head. "I need to say it myself." She smiled not with her mouth, but with her eyes. "Then say it like it matters." The school's administrative building was attached to the far end of the gymnasium. It had always looked like an afterthought, brick that didn't match, a door that stuck, and windows that hadn't been cleaned in years. Inside, the air was cold, the lighting harsh. It smelled faintly of dry erase markers and cafeteria chicken nuggets. But today, it felt different. There were 6 people sitting behind a long folding table at the front of the room. The disciplinary hearing panel, made up of assistant principals, a district administrator, and 2 rotating faculty members. They all wore suits or business casual. Legal pads rested in front of them. Pens uncapped, ready. Malik and Donna sat at a single table facing them. It looked too small, like the kind of desk a child would sit behind during timeout. A school liaison stood off to the side, tapping on a laptop. Principal Hammond sat 2 chairs away, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Malik placed a file folder on the desk. It was neatly labeled, Malik Porter, Hearing Response Documentation. He had spent 3 nights organizing it. Inside were printed copies of the appeal letter, school policy on student rights, statements from classmates who saw the incident, and screenshots from the security footage. Each section was tabbed with colorful post-its. Blue for facts, yellow, FOR questions, green for rights. The room fell quiet. The chairwoman of the panel, a tall, gray-haired woman with sharp cheekbones and glasses that slid down her nose, looked up. "Let's begin," she said. Malik stood. "I'd like to speak on my own behalf." The panel members exchanged glances. One of them, a middle-aged man with a kind face and tired eyes, nodded. "Go ahead, Malik." He cleared his throat and opened his folder. "On Monday, I was accused of hitting a classmate, Cody Miller. He has a bruise under his eye, and the assumption was made that I caused it on purpose." He paused. "That's not what happened." He glanced up at the panel. "Cody shoved me while we were arguing over who had the ball. I stumbled, and I raised my arm to block myself. Cody tripped and hit his head on a pole. I never hit him, not with a fist, not at all." He turned the first page in his folder. This is a copy of the school's code of conduct. On page 14, it says, "Students accused of physical violence are entitled to a full investigation before disciplinary action is taken. I was suspended the same day. No one asked for my side." He turned another page. This is the official write-up by Mr. Jameson, the playground monitor. It says he saw me with my arm raised, but it doesn't mention the shove that came before, or that I fell backward. It doesn't say that Cody was the one who initiated contact. Malik took a breath. He felt the silence pressing in, but it didn't rattle him. He was ready for this. He flipped again. These are character statements from 4 other students who were there. They say Cody shoved me, that I didn't fight back, that I looked surprised. He handed a copy of the statements to the liaison, who passed them down the line. "And this," he said, holding up a small printed still frame from the security camera footage, "shows the moment right before Cody hit the pole. My hands are up, open. I'm not attacking. I'm protecting myself." He set the picture down. "I know I'm just a kid, but I also know what it means when people assume the worst of me without asking questions. I've seen it happen to my friends. I've seen it happen to people who look like me." He looked around the room, his voice calm but strong. All I wanted was a fair chance to be heard. For a few seconds, the room was completely still. No scribbling, no typing. Just the sound of the clock ticking on the back wall. The gray-haired chairwoman folded her hands. "Malik," she said, her voice softer now, "did you bring a parent with you today to speak on your behalf?" Donna stood, but Malik raised a hand gently. "She's here for support. I'm speaking for myself." One of the panelists, a man who had barely looked up during the presentation, leaned forward now. "Did you prepare all of this yourself?" Malik nodded. "Yes, sir. My dad was a public defender. He taught me how to organize evidence before he passed." There was a long pause. Even Principal Hammond looked unsure of what to say. Finally, the chairwoman cleared her throat. Principal Hammond, she said, turning slightly. Was this evidence reviewed before the suspension was issued? Hammond shifted in his seat. Not in full detail. The urgency of the incident required swift action. We believed the witness statement was sufficient at the time. The gray-haired woman raised an eyebrow. So? No? Hammond said nothing. Donna folded her arms across her chest. The panel asked a few more questions, but they were half-hearted, almost embarrassed. They reviewed the printed documents and copies of the screenshots. Then, after a quiet 5-minute recess, they called Malik and his mother back into the room. The chairwoman spoke first. Malik, after reviewing the evidence you've presented, and in accordance with district policy, we've decided to reverse the suspension. It will be expunged from your record. You will return to school Monday without penalty. Malik blinked once. Donna didn't move. And, the woman added, I'd like to personally apologize to you for not being listened to the first time. Malik nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. But I hope it's not just me who gets listened to. Next time. They left the building in silence. The parking lot felt warmer than it had going in. The sun was out now, full and bright. In the car. Donna finally exhaled. You okay? She asked, starting the engine. I think so. You were incredible in there. Malik shrugged. I just told the truth, she smiled. That's the hardest thing to do sometimes. He looked out the window as the school building shrank. In the rearview mirror. You think this'll stop them from judging me? Donna didn't answer right away. No, she finally said. But maybe it'll make them think twice next time. That night, Malik sat at his desk again. Shadow was curled at his feet, snoring gently. On the screen in front of him was a new blank document. He typed the title, When a Child Knows Their Rights. He leaned back and stared at it for a while. Then he typed the first line. I wasn't supposed to win, but I came prepared anyway. The room was warmer now, not physically but emotionally. The energy had shifted. After Malik's presentation, something unspoken had changed in the hearing room. The panelists, once rigid and mechanical, were now leaning in just a little closer. Their pens moved slower. Their eyes lingered longer. It was no longer a routine case. It was a reckoning. A boy they thought would crumble had stood up and brought clarity into a place that had grown too comfortable with assumptions. But the hearing wasn't over yet. Malik, the chairwoman said gently, we'd like to speak with the student involved in the incident, Cody Miller. Is that okay with you? Malik looked over at his mother, then back at the panel. Yes, I'd like to ask him a few questions. The room stiffened again. You want to question him yourself? Asked one of the panelists, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Malik said simply. With respect, the panel exchanged glances. It wasn't protocol, but there was no rule against it either. Very well, the chairwoman said. Cody will be brought in shortly. You may proceed when we give the signal. The door creaked open. Cody Miller stepped in, hands shoved into the pockets of his hoodie. His blonde hair flopped awkwardly over one eye, and his lips were pressed into a tight line. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a kid who'd just been told to turn off his Xbox. He glanced around the room, then at Malik. He looked uncomfortable. Have a seat, Cody, the chairwoman said. Cody sat across from Malik, barely meeting his gaze. Malik waited until everyone settled. Then he stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his tone. He sounded like a student giving a class presentation. Calm, measured, but every word landed like a small, clean cut. Hi, Cody. Thanks for coming in. I just want to ask a few questions so everyone here can understand what happened. Cody nodded slowly. Malik glanced at his notes, then looked back up. Can you tell us what happened on the playground that day? Cody shifted in his chair. We were playing basketball. I had the ball. Malik tried to take it from me. And then? I told him to back off. He didn't. I pushed him. And then he hit me. Malik nodded like he was taking that in. Where? Did I hit you? Exactly? Cody paused. On my shoulder, I think. There was a pause in the room. Malik tilted his head slightly. You sure? Because in your original report, it says you had a bruise under your left eye. Cody looked down. Oh, right. My face. Malik stepped closer to the panel table and held up a copy of the nurse's report. It says here the bruise was under your left eye? Is that correct? Cody nodded. Malik turned back to him. Which hand am I? I don't know. Malik held up his right hand. I'm right-handed. You're left-handed, right? Yeah. If I had hit you on the left side of your face with my right hand, wouldn't I have had to be standing on your left side? I don't know. Malik pointed to the still photo from the video, already printed and placed in the evidence packet. In this screenshot from the security footage, you're facing me. I raise my right hand to block, and you're coming from my left. If I hit you, it would have been on your right side, not your left. The room was dead silent. Cody shifted again. His face turned red. Malik's voice remained steady. Cody, did I ever close my fist? I don't remember. Malik pointed at another image. This is a still frame 3 seconds before you fell. My hands are open, palms up, not fists. Cody looked down at the table. Malik took a breath. Why did you tell everyone I hit you? I don't know. Yes, you do, Malik said. His voice didn't get louder, but it cut sharper. You got scared. You thought if you blamed me, no one would ask questions. And you were right. Until now. The chairwoman cleared her throat, but didn't interrupt. No one did. Malik looked down at his folder, then back up. You ever wonder what it feels like to be punished for something you didn't do, Cody? To have people look at you and assume you're dangerous? Violent? Just because you're quiet or different or black? Cody said nothing. Malik looked toward the panel, then turned back to him. I'm not mad at you. I'm disappointed. Because you knew I didn't hit you, and you let me carry that weight alone. He returned to his seat. The chairwoman leaned forward. Cody, do you want to change your original statement? Cody's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Do you admit Malik didn't hit you? Yes. Donna reached across and squeezed her son's hand. After Cody was dismissed, the panel asked no more questions. The truth had already spoken, clear as sunlight through a dirty window. Principal Hammond looked like he was shrinking in his seat. Malik, the chairwoman said softly, you've been through a lot this week. More than any student should have to navigate alone. I want to apologize for the way this was handled. Malik nodded once. She continued, would you be willing to share your experience with the Student Leadership Committee next month? I believe others could learn a lot from you. Malik looked surprised, but then nodded. I'd like that. As they walked out of the building, Donna put her arm around him. You did it, she said. Malik didn't smile. Not really. But something lighter passed over his face, like he'd exhaled a weight that had been stuck inside for years. Back home, after dinner, he sat at his dad's old desk again. Shadow was curled beside him, breathing deep and slow. Malik opened his laptop and began typing a new document, cross-examination, a beginner's guide for middle schoolers. Because sometimes the most powerful thing in the room isn't your voice. It's your preparation. He looked out the window, where dusk was falling gently over the city. He didn't just win a hearing. He'd built a foundation. And for the first time in a long time, the system had to listen. It was Monday morning when the footage went public. Not because the school wanted it to. Because Donna Porter asked the right question at the right time in front of the right people. After the disciplinary panel cleared Malik's name, Donna had sent a request to the district's compliance officer. She wasn't trying to make noise. She just wanted any line between what had happened to her son and the hundreds of other kids who never got to sit in that tiny room and tell their side. "I want the footage released," she'd written. Not just to the people in that hearing, but to every teacher and parent who thought they already knew what happened. It took 2 days, a few tense emails, and one firm reminder of public records law. Then it happened. The clip 39 seconds of grainy security camera footage was posted quietly on the school district's internal platform. No announcement, no apology. Just a video link with the title, Recess Incident, March 14th, Lincoln Middle School. But kids have phones. Parents talk. And by the end of lunch that day, every 7th grader at Lincoln had watched it. In the clip, you could clearly see the moment. Malik and Cody at the edge of the court, the orange basketball bouncing away. Cody stepping in, pushing. Malik flinching, arms up. Cody stumbling. And then, the sharp, accidental thud as his cheek clipped the metal pole by the tetherball court. It was awkward. Fast. Imperfect. But it was clear. Malik didn't throw a punch. He didn't attack. He protected himself. And suddenly, the story changed. By third period, Malik could feel the difference in the air. Kids didn't whisper when he walked past anymore. They didn't point or avoid his eyes. Some even nodded at him, like they were acknowledging something unspoken. When he slid into his seat in social studies, Mrs. Kirkland, the teacher who'd never smiled at him before, paused at the front of the room. "Malik," she said, pushing her glasses up, "I saw the footage. I just wanted to say, I'm glad the truth came out." Malik blinked, then nodded once. He wasn't sure what to say to that. At lunch, things got weirder. He sat at his usual spot near the end of the cafeteria back corner, near the vending machines. He liked it there. Quiet, fewer eyes. But today, kids who never spoke to him slid into the seats nearby. Double quotes, "Yo, that hearing thing? That was wild," said Andre, a tall kid from math class. "You, talked like a lawyer or something." "I didn't know you could do that," said Tasha, the girl who usually spent lunch filming TikToks. "My cousin got suspended for something dumb last month. I'm gonna tell her about that hearing thing." Malik nodded again, still quiet. But something inside him shifted. For the first time, people weren't just seeing what happened to him. They were thinking about what could happen to themselves. Meanwhile, the adults weren't sure how to react. The principal called Malik into his office after school. This time, he didn't sound like a man reading from a handbook. "Malik, I want to apologize." "Formally," Principal Hammond said, avoiding eye contact, "the situation wasn't handled with the thoroughness it deserved." Malik sat across from him, hands folded in his lap. "I appreciate that," he said. Hammond cleared his throat. "There's also been some interest from the district in having you speak at a few student events. Maybe a roundtable on student rights, a leadership seminar." Malik tilted his head. "Because I didn't hit someone?" The principal looked uncomfortable. "Because you showed maturity and poise." Malik didn't smile, but he nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." Hammond looked relieved. "Great, we'll follow up with dates." As Malik stood to leave, he turned back. "Sir?" "Yes? You should check in on Cody." The principal blinked. "Pardon?" "He lied, yeah, but he's just a kid." Something made him feel like that was his only move. Someone should ask why. And then Malik left. At home, Donna was already heating up leftovers when Malik walked through the door. She was watching the local news, but the sound was low. "They called again," she said, not turning from the stove. "The district want you to come speak next Friday. Superintendent's Youth Roundtable." Malik dropped his backpack on the floor and exhaled. I guess I'm a guest speaker now. Donna smirked. You better still clean your room, Professor Porter. Malik grinned just a little. No promises. She set a plate in front of him. Proud of you, she said. I know, he replied. Then, after a beat, me too. That weekend, Malik sat down and wrote something different. Not for school, not for a hearing. Just for anyone who might need it. Title: How to Fight Fairly in a System That Isn't. Don't panic. That's what they expect. Ask for everything in writing. Know your rights. Even if they pretend you don't have any. Don't yell. Speak like your truth belongs in the room. And always document everything. He printed it. Brought 10 copies to school. Left a few on the bulletin board outside the library. Tucked one into the nurse's office file tray. Gave one to the school counselor quietly, without saying much. By Tuesday. A few copies were missing. By Thursday. He saw someone had written at the bottom of one. This helped me. Thank you. But the twist from the camera didn't end there. The footage rippled outward. Cody's parents came to the school later that week. Donna crossed paths with them in the parking lot. The father was stiff, eyes guarded. But the mother looked broken. I'm sorry, she said to Donna. We didn't know. He told us. Donna held up a hand. He's a kid. Kids make mistakes. So do systems. The woman nodded, blinking back tears. Thank you for not pressing charges. Donna shook her head. We're not trying to ruin anyone's life. Just trying to protect ours. They nodded, and then walked away. The school made a quiet policy change the following month. A new notice went out to parents. All disciplinary actions involving physical contact will now require video review when available, witness accounts from multiple parties, and written documentation before suspension is issued. No mention of Malik's name. But he didn't need credit. He had something better. Respect. By May, Malik was giving his second talk, this time at a middle school downtown, where a 6th grader had been suspended for talking back after asking why she was being searched for candy. When Malik finished speaking, a boy in the front row raised his hand. How do you stay so calm when people lie about you? He asked. Malik paused, thought. Then said, because being angry doesn't make you louder. It just makes it easier for them to ignore you. The boy nodded. And somewhere in that quiet gym, another kid began to believe their story mattered. Friday came with the kind of nervous energy that clings to the walls. The air felt thicker than usual inside Lincoln Middle School. The usual buzz of lockers slamming and sneakers squeaking was still there, but it was quieter, almost as if the school was collectively holding its breath. Everyone knew who was speaking at the assembly. Malik Porter, the kid who'd been suspended. The kid who stood up at his own hearing. The kid who proved the camera told a different story. Now, he was about to speak in front of the entire student body, over 500 kids, teachers, faculty, and district guests. Not to apologize. Not to defend himself, but to share what he'd learned. He stood backstage in the dim light of the auditorium wings, smoothing the front of his button-down shirt. He didn't wear a tie today. Didn't feel like he needed one. His mom was in the front row already, sitting next to Ms. Alvarez from the district office. Malik spotted them through the curtain. Donna wore a soft smile, the kind that wasn't flashy, but full of pride. Mr. Granger, the school counselor, leaned over to him. You ready? Malik nodded once. Yeah. You sure? You don't have to do this. I want to. Okay. Just remember, don't talk to them, Mr. Granger. Sighed, patting his shoulder. Talk with them. Malik nodded again. Then the curtain drew back. The stage lights were brighter than he expected. They poured over him like sunlight. He blinked once, then stepped forward. A quiet shuffle swept through the crowd students, whispering, nudging each other, but nobody laughed. Nobody rolled their eyes. They were curious. They were waiting. Malik stood behind the podium, adjusted the mic. He looked out at the sea of faces. Some familiar, some not. 7th graders, 8th graders. Teachers who once gave him the side eye. Kids who thought he was a troublemaker. And a few who always believed he was something more. Then, he began. My name is Malik Porter. I'm 12 years old. And for about 5 days this semester, I wasn't treated like a student. I wasn't treated like a kid. I was treated like a problem. There were a few murmurs in the crowd. Teachers shifted in their seats. I'm not here to talk bad about anyone. I'm not here to make anyone feel small. I'm here because I want us all to remember something. What you assume about someone can hurt more than what they actually did. And assumptions? They stick. They stick to kids like me. Quiet kids, black kids. They stick faster than truth. And sometimes they get written down before you even get a chance to speak. Malik took a breath. The room was still. When they called me to the office, I didn't get asked what happened. I got told. They said I hit someone. I didn't, but it didn't matter what I said, not at first. It mattered what they thought I was capable of. He looked up, scanning the faces. Some kids were leaning forward now. Some teachers looked uncomfortable. Others looked reflective. If I hadn't learned how to advocate for myself, if my mom hadn't stood with me, if I hadn't found the camera footage, I'd still be suspended right now. I'd still have a record saying I was violent. Malik flipped the page in his notebook. You know what's funny? I wasn't even mad. I was tired. Tired of being seen as something I'm not. Tired of people talking about fairness, but not practicing it. Tired of being told, just follow the rules, when the rules weren't made to protect me. A hush fell over the auditorium. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was sacred. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the same chance to be believed. That's it. The same chance to speak. The same chance to be seen as more than a mistake waiting to happen. He looked toward the back of the room, where Cody sat with his homeroom class. The two boys locked eyes for a moment. Malik didn't flinch. Some of you saw the video. You saw what really happened. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about me. This is about every kid in this room who's ever been scared to raise their hand. Every kid who's ever been called a name in the hallway. Every kid who's been punished louder than they've ever been praised. His voice stayed soft. But the room leaned closer. Fairness doesn't start with the rules. It starts with how we see each other. If all you see is someone who's angry or loud or different, then you miss the real story. He paused, took a deep breath. I didn't give this speech because I want attention. I gave it because the next time something like this happens, I want that kid to feel a little less alone. Because truth? It shouldn't need a camera to be believed. He looked at the panel of teachers and staff sitting. Stage left, then down to his mom, then to the front row of 7th graders, watching with wide, unblinking eyes. So if you're ever in my spot, remember this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to believe your voice is worth using. He stepped back from the mic, and the room rose to its feet. It wasn't a roaring standing ovation. It was better. It was honest. Kids stood slowly. Some clapped hard. Others just stood in quiet respect. A few teachers wiped their eyes. Donna Porter didn't clap. She just closed her eyes and breathed, like a weight had finally lifted off her chest. Malik didn't wave. He just stepped off the stage. Later that day, in the hallway, a 6th grade girl stopped him near the water fountain. I watched you up there, she said. Thanks, Malik replied. She hesitated, then added, I get called loud a lot. like too loud. But I only talk when I'm nervous. He nodded. I used to think that made me annoying, she said. Now I think maybe it just means I have something to say. Malik smiled. Then, say it. That night, Donna made Malik's favorite spaghetti with too much cheese. They didn't talk about the speech. They didn't need to dot at one point. As they sat at the small table, she looked up and said quietly, Your dad would have been proud. Malik didn't respond right away. Then he said, I think I was proud enough for both of us. He went to bed early. But before he turned off the light, he opened his notebook one last time. He wrote one sentence. When you know who you are, no one can write your story for you. And then he slept. For the first time in weeks, he didn't dream of hearings or accusations. He dreamed of possibility. The Monday after the speech felt different, but not in the way Malik expected. People were still talking about it. Yes. The lunch tables buzzed. A few teachers mentioned how mature he was. Mr. Granger gave him a fist bump in the hallway. Even students who barely knew his name suddenly offered awkward nods or said, Good job, man. But there was also something else, a hesitation. Like the school wasn't quite sure what to do with him now. He had stepped out of the box they'd quietly placed him in, and no one had built a bigger one yet. In language arts, Miss Lee asked the class to write a short essay on someone who inspires you. When she returned the papers a few days later, Malik noticed something strange. A few students had written about him. He hadn't expected that. One of them was Kyla, a quiet girl, who wore oversized glasses and usually kept her head buried in her sketchpad. Her paper was folded twice, like she didn't want anyone to read it. Malik Porter is brave, because he made me feel like my story matters too. I used to think no one cared about what happened to me when I got bullied last year. But now I think, maybe they just didn't hear me loud enough. Next time, I'll speak louder. Malik read it twice, then folded it again and slipped it into his backpack. Not because he needed praise, but because he wanted to remember why he spoke in the first place. That afternoon, in the staff lounge, the conversation was different. I'm just saying, said Mrs. Geller, folding her arms over her chest. We've got to be careful about turning every student into a social justice warrior. It's not about that, said Mr. Granger. It's about fairness. That kid stood up for himself in a way most adults couldn't. I get that, she said, picking at her salad. But we're teachers, not trial judges. This isn't a courtroom. No, Mr. Granger said calmly. But for some of these kids, school is the only courtroom they'll ever get. The room fell quiet. A week later, a new incident stirred things up. Jordan Reyes, an 8th grader, got suspended for disrespectful behavior during a science test. His teacher claimed he rolled his eyes and mumbled something under his breath. Was it no yelling? No threats. Just a supposed attitude problem. Jordan was Ladings, bilingual, and often spoke in Spanglish when he was nervous. He said he'd whispered to himself to stay focused, but the teacher had assumed it was sarcasm. Word got around fast. Malik found out at lunch that he didn't hesitate. By that afternoon, he'd helped Jordan file an informal appeal letter based on the same district code he'd learned weeks earlier. He stayed up late helping Jordan format it, just like his dad once helped him. When they handed it in the next day, the front office looked stunned. You boys are really learning how to use your voices, said Miss Carmichael, eyebrows raised. Malik just nodded. That's the idea. The district granted a review. Jordan's suspension was lifted. But the science teacher wasn't happy. The following week, Malik was called into a different kind of meeting. It wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about misconduct. It was about tone. Malik, said the vice principal, folding his hands. Some staff have expressed concern that you're creating a climate of pushback. Malik tilted his head. A climate of what? You're encouraging other students to challenge decisions, to question authority. That's not always helpful in a learning environment. Malik paused, then spoke carefully. With all due respect, isn't learning about asking questions? The room went quiet. Donna was furious when she found out. They're uncomfortable because you're making them see what they ignored, she said. That's not your fault. I don't want to be a problem, Malik said. You're not, she said. You're a mirror. And some people don't like their reflection. That weekend, Malik sat in the park with Shadow curled beside him, watching the sun dip low behind the trees. He had his notebook with him. Half of it was full now notes, quotes, ideas, sketches of what a better school might look like. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, but something inside him kept whispering, "You started this. Don't stop now." The next week, something unexpected happened. The school board invited Malik to attend a closed meeting with a group of teachers and parents to talk about fairness in school. Discipline. Malik almost said no. He didn't want to become a token, a poster kid. But then he thought of Jordan, Kayla, himself. He said yes. At the meeting, people sat around a long table, papers in front of them, coffee cups half full. Some smiled at him when he walked in. Some didn't. The superintendent, Dr. Vance, welcomed him politely. "We've heard a lot about you," he said. "I've heard a lot about this place too," Malik replied, calm. There was a pause. Then he sat down. They asked him what he thought needed to change. He didn't give a speech. He told stories about being pulled from class without warning. About being labeled before anyone asked what happened, about how respect always seemed to mean staying quiet. And he said this: if fairness depends on how loud your parents are, or what color your skin is, then it's not fairness. It's favoritism. And favoritism is just another word for injustice. The room was quiet for a long time after that. By the end of the month, the school announced a new policy. Every disciplinary action would require 2 staff witnesses. A student advocate, a teacher, or counselor of the student's choice would be allowed to sit in on hearings. And most importantly, all students would be taught basic legal rights as part of their civics unit. They called it the Porter Amendment. Malik didn't want the name, but he didn't argue, because this time it meant someone else might get to speak before being silenced. Later that spring, Malik sat alone in the school library. A student from the 6th grade walked in and nervously approached. "Are you Malik?" He nodded. "My sister said you helped people who get in trouble." Malik closed his notebook. "I try. I think I need help." Malik smiled. "Pull up a chair." He never asked to be a hero. He just asked to be heard. No cape, no courtroom drama. Just a kid, a laptop, and a belief that fairness shouldn't depend on your zip code or the color of your skin. Malik Porter didn't raise his voice, but his truth echoed louder than the lie. And maybe that's the real victory. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Click subscribe and stay with us, because we tell the stories others overlook. The kind that don't make headlines, but make hearts change. Asterisk, the school year came to a close, not with fireworks, not with parades, but with something quieter, more permanent. Change. Not everyone saw it happening. There was no headline, no Instagram post going viral. But it was there, in the subtle rewiring of how people talked, how teachers paused before writing referrals, how students started asking why instead of why bother. And right in the middle of it all stood Malik Porter. Still 12, still soft-spoken, but no longer invisible. It started with a knock. A quiet one. During 5th period on a Tuesday. Ms. Lee opened the door, and there stood a girl from another class, holding a piece of paper that trembled slightly in her. "Can I speak to Malik?" Ms. Lee looked confused, but nodded. The girl stepped in and handed him the note. "Can you help me?" I think I'm being blamed for something I didn't do. There was no name. Just shaky handwriting and the kind of desperation Malik remembered all too well. He folded the note, slipped it into his binder, and nodded. I'll meet you after school, he whispered. And so it began again. By the end of the week, Malik had helped 3 students draft appeal letters. None of them were major offenses. One for speaking out in class. One for being late too many times. One for refusing to follow directions, which turned out to be a misunderstanding with a substitute who didn't know the student spoke limited English. None of them had planned to fight back. Until now. One afternoon, Malik sat on the front steps of the school, a breeze tugging gently at the corner of his notebook. Shadow lay beside him, eyes half closed, tail thudding now and then against the concrete. He wasn't technically allowed on school property, but nobody had the heart to turn away a dog with one cloudy eye and a face full of wisdom. Principal Hammond came outside carrying 2 plastic water bottles. He handed one to Malik without a word and sat down beside him, the creak of his knees louder than expected. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Hammond spoke. You know, I didn't see this coming. Malik raised an eyebrow. Me either. I thought you were just another quiet kid who kept his head down. Didn't expect all this leadership. Malik didn't smile. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? Hammond looked at him, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess it is. Another beat passed. Some of the staff still think you're stirring things up. The principal admitted. Malik didn't flinch. I'm just asking people to listen. They're not used to kids asking for that, Hammond said. They should be, Malik replied. Graduation was modest, just folding chairs in the gym, a rented PA system, and a cheap podium that wobbled. If you leaned on it. No one expected Malik to speak again. But when the vice principal announced, there would be one student voice, chosen to give a farewell message on behalf of the entire class. No one questioned the choice. Malik stepped up to the podium in a pressed white shirt and jeans. No notes. This time. No papers. Just him. In truth. When I started this year, I thought the best way to survive middle school was to stay invisible. Don't speak up. Don't push back. Don't cause trouble. But then I learned something. Being silent doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for others to speak over you. He looked around the room. Eyes met his. Every seat was filled. Parents, teachers, friends, even Cody. I didn't fight the system because I wanted attention. I fought because the truth deserved more than whispers. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. And I wanted every student who ever sat alone at lunch, or got blamed for something they didn't do, or felt small in a room full of adults to. No, you don't have to shout. You don't have to throw punches. You just have to stand. The crowd was silent. Not in confusion, but in awe. Malik took a step back. That was all he needed to say. After the ceremony, a boy from 5th grade ran up to him, carrying a copy of the How to Fight Fair guide Malik had posted online. I printed this out, the boy said. My big brother read it. He said you're like a real lawyer or something. Malik laughed. Not yet. You gonna be one? Malik looked out at the parking lot, where his mom stood hugging other parents, Shadow wagging his tail beside her. Then he looked back at the boy. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Summer came quickly, but even when school let out, the requests didn't stop. Emails, messages, students from other districts asking how they could do what Malik did. Donna finally sat him down one morning over pancakes. You're not obligated to fix the world, baby, she said gently. I know. You can say no. You can rest. I know, she smiled. But you won't, will you? He shook his head. Probably not. One evening, as the sun dipped below the edge of the neighborhood, Malik sat in the living room writing again. He opened a blank Word doc and titled it, The Quiet Guide to Being Heard, for Students. By a Student. Chapter 1. Know Your Rights. Chapter 2. Ask the Questions Adults Avoid. Chapter 3. Stay Calm. That scares them more than anger. He didn't know if he'd publish it. He just knew it needed to exist, because if the system had a guidebook, then so should the kids inside it. Shadow groaned and rested his head on Malik's foot. Malik smiled and typed one final line before shutting the laptop. You don't need a microphone. You just need the courage to speak when they hope you won't. Then he sat back, looked out the window. In the quiet of that evening, the world didn't feel perfect, but it felt like it was listening. And that was enough for now.